At 14, my parents ditched me at an airport over a bad grade. That's what happens when you don't do your best. My father laughed. I never went back. 22 years later, they tracked me down, desperate and broken. Sup Reddit. Look, I need to set the scene here because this story gets wild, and you need to understand just how messed up these people were from day one. 22 years ago, I, 36 male, was living what looked like the American dream on steroids. My birth parents, Joe and Paige, weren't just rich. They were Detroit royalty. 4 luxury car dealerships, BMW and Mercedes. Houses that belonged in magazines. The whole 9 yards. Dad played golf with judges and had governors on speed dial. Our house in Buckhead was 7,000 square feet of screw you money on display. Italian marble, full-time landscaping crew, circular driveway packed with cars. Picture every rich family stereotype you've ever seen in movies. That was my childhood. Dad wore suits to casual Saturday golf games and tipped the valet $50 just to make sure everyone noticed. Mom spent more on a single dinner party centerpiece than most families spent on groceries in a month. But here's the thing about perfect families. They're usually hiding some seriously dark stuff behind those mahogany doors. And our family? Pure psychological warfare. Enter Brandon, my older brother, and their golden child. This kid was basically manufactured in a lab to be everything they wanted. 4.0 GPA, lacrosse captain, early admission to Duke with a full ride. His bedroom looked like a trophy store had exploded. The kid literally never got a grade below an A, and trust me, they never let me forget it. Me? I was the family disappointment they couldn't quite figure out how to fix. Don't get me wrong, I wasn't some screw-up. 3.8 GPA, varsity tennis, advanced math program. Most parents would throw a party. Mine saw mediocrity wearing a participation trophy. The comparisons were relentless. Brandon never needed geometry tutoring. Brandon never came in second. Brandon never had to retake practice tests. It was like living with a broken record that only played one song, Why Can't You Be More Like Your Brother? I started keeping a mental tally of the comparisons. 37 in 1 week during my sophomore year. 37 separate occasions where they found opportunities to remind me I wasn't measuring up to their golden child. The worst part? Brandon would just sit there during these moments, never once telling them to knock it off. The kid was too busy basking in the praise to give a damn about what it was doing to me. At dinner parties, they'd beam talking about Brandon's latest achievement, then look at me like I was a stray dog they'd accidentally adopted. Alan is still finding his strengths, they'd say with these tight smiles that fooled exactly nobody. The whole thing came to a head in March 2002. I'd just finished the most brutal semester of my life at Westminster Academy. Advanced Physics, Calculus BC, AP Literature, AP European History, and Latin 3. We're talking 3 to 4 hours of homework every single night. I was dead on my feet. Report card day comes, and I'm actually proud for once. 5 A's and 1 A minus in Advanced Physics, the hardest class in the school. Any normal parent would be proud. Mine saw it as evidence I was getting soft. Dad was in his study, this massive oak-paneled shrine to his own ego, complete with photos of him glad-handing every politician in Michigan. I knocked, walked in, and handed him the report card like I was presenting the crown jewels. He studied it for what felt like forever, and his face just got darker and darker. "This is completely unacceptable," he said, dropping the paper like it was contaminated. "An A minus? This is exactly the lazy performance that'll keep you out of top-tier universities." I tried to explain. Advanced Physics was notorious. Only 3 kids got A's. The teacher said I did great. But he cut me off. I don't care what the teacher said. Brandon has never received anything below an A. You're clearly not pushing yourself. Mom appeared like she'd been lurking in the hallway. She probably was. She picked up the report card and did this theatrical headshake. "Alan, we invest $20,000 a year in Westminster. We expect results that justify that investment. This A minus says you're not taking your responsibilities seriously. 20 grand a year, and they were losing their minds over 1 A minus. Let that sink in. I studied 6 hours a night for the physics final, I told them. I had tutoring twice a week. I did every extra credit assignment. Apparently that wasn't sufficient, Dad said. Maybe you need a reality check about what happens to people who settle for good enough. They did that thing married couples do. The silent communication where they're having a whole conversation with their eyes. Something was being decided, and I wasn't part of it. We're taking a spontaneous family trip to Milwaukee tomorrow, Dad announced. I have urgent business meetings with an acquisition target. Educational for you to see how real business works. What about school? Missing 2 days won't hurt your grades, Mom said, with this nasty little smirk. Besides, this'll be a valuable learning experience. Brandon couldn't come because of lacrosse playoffs. Should have been my first red flag. They never included me in business trips when the Golden Boy was available. That night, I packed 3 days' worth of clothes and actually convinced myself this might be their way of making peace. Maybe they wanted quality time, just the three of us. I should have noticed they packed lighter than usual for a 3-day trip. I should have questioned why they kept whispering after they thought I'd gone to bed. Instead, I went to sleep thinking Milwaukee might be a fresh start. What an idiot I was. The flight to Milwaukee Mitchell left Detroit at 9:15 a.m. Wednesday morning. During the flight, they kept making these cryptic comments about character development and learning real independence. When I asked for specifics about Dad's meetings or our itinerary, they dodged with vague nonsense. Dad was reading some business magazine, occasionally chuckling at articles like he was in on some private joke. Mom kept checking her watch and exchanging those meaningful looks with him. In hindsight, they were probably timing everything down to the minute. This wasn't spontaneous. This was planned execution. You'll understand soon enough, Mom said, patting my hand. Sometimes the most valuable lessons can't be explained. They have to be experienced. We landed around 11:30 Central Time. Instead of heading to baggage claim or getting a rental car, Dad led us straight to the departure terminal. I figured he needed to grab return tickets or something. Alan, wait right here by this pillar, Mom said, pointing to a concrete column near security. Busy area, but not crowded. Perfect spot where I wouldn't be in anyone's way, but also wouldn't get lost. Dad forgot something in the rental car, and I need to make calls about tonight's dinner meeting. 30 minutes, then lunch, and the hotel. Something felt off, but I couldn't put my finger on it. Can I come with you? Alan, you're 14, Dad said with this condescending laugh. 30 minutes alone won't kill you. Consider it practice for adulthood. But what if? 30 minutes, Mom repeated firmly. Stay right here. Don't wander, don't talk to strangers, don't leave this spot. We'll be back before you know it. I watched them walk toward ground transportation, Dad's hand on Mom's back like they were executing some kind of mission. They moved away. What I didn't notice then but remember clearly now, they weren't carrying any bags. Not Dad's leather briefcase he took everywhere. Not Mom's oversized purse that usually held half her life. Nothing. Just walking empty-handed toward the exit, like they were heading straight to departures. The first 30 minutes crawled by. I sat on my duffel bag, watching families reunite, business travelers speed walking to their gates, old couples navigating the crowds. 45 minutes in, I was getting worried. Dad's meetings were supposed to start at 2 p.m. If we were grabbing lunch first, they should be back by now. By 1:30, I was officially freaking out. I checked the information desk. No pages. I searched every restaurant and shop within 100 yards of that pillar. Nothing. Around 2 p.m., I saw him. Dad was walking past the security area, maybe 50 feet away, moving fast toward the departure gates like he was late for a flight. Alone. I waved frantically and yelled his name, running toward him despite Mom's orders to stay put. He saw me clearly. We made eye contact across that busy terminal. He stopped, looked directly at me for several seconds, and smiled. Not a warm dad smile. Something cold and satisfied. Figure it out, son, he called over the noise, loud enough that other travelers turned to stare. Time to learn what the real world looks like when you don't perform at your best. Then he turned and disappeared into the crowd, heading to the gates. I stood there like I'd been hit by a truck, watching hundreds of people flow around me while my brain tried to process what had just happened. My father had just walked away from me in a strange city, 800 miles from home. The full reality hit when I got back to the pillar and checked my wallet. $47. No cell phone. This was 2002. Parents didn't think 14-year-olds needed phones. No ID except my Westminster student card. No credit cards, no emergency contacts, no way home. 800 miles from Detroit with less than $50 and no plan. They had abandoned me at Milwaukee Mitchell as punishment for one A- in advanced physics. Let me repeat that, because it sounds insane even writing it. My parents flew me to another state and left me at an airport because I got an A-. I spent another hour by that pillar, bouncing between disbelief and full panic mode. Part of me kept expecting them to come back laughing about the world's cruelest practical joke. The rational part knew they were probably already wheels up back to Detroit. Around 4 p.m., airport security approached. Detective Monica, maybe 45, with that seen everything twice cop vibe. Professional, but not cold. Son, you've been sitting here quite a while, she said, crouching to my level. Everything okay? Waiting for someone? The whole story poured out like a broken dam. I watched Detective Monica's expression shift from concern to barely controlled rage, as I explained. How long have you been here alone? About 4 hours. Any way to contact your parents? Phone numbers? Hotel info? No, ma'am. They didn't tell me where we were staying, and I don't have a phone. She took down everything. Full names, Detroit address, dad's office numbers, dealership info. What your parents did isn't discipline, she said grimly. It's criminal child abandonment, and it's a serious felony in Wisconsin. I'm calling Milwaukee PD and Child Services. You're not in trouble, but we need to get you proper care while we sort this mess out. 2 Milwaukee cops arrived within 20 minutes. Detective Paul, maybe 50, a guy with gray hair and the weathered look of someone who'd seen humanity's worst. His partner, Officer Emma, was younger and looked genuinely angry when she heard my story. Your parents committed aggravated child abandonment under Wisconsin law, Detective Paul explained, pulling out a tape recorder. Need to get your full statement. Take your time. Tell me everything. I walked them through the whole sequence. The A-, their reaction, the sudden Milwaukee trip, waiting by the pillar, Dad's final words before vanishing. Detective Paul asked clarifying questions and had me repeat details for accuracy. Child abandonment is a Class 2 felony here, he said when I finished. 3 to 7 years in prison. What your parents did isn't just cruel, it's illegal, and we take these cases seriously. Detective Paul had seen this before, though apparently not quite like this. Usually it's poverty-related, he explained while we waited for DCFS. Parents can't afford food or housing. Kid ends up alone. This is different. Your parents chose to abandon you as punishment. That makes it especially messed up, legally speaking. Wisconsin Department of Children and Family Services showed up around 6 p.m. Carol, mid-50s, gray hair, calm professional energy, like she'd handled this scenario 1,000 times. She carried a briefcase and talked to me like an adult. Alan, I'm sorry this happened, she said, sitting next to me in the terminal waiting area. We'll make sure you're safe while the legal system handles their actions. DCFS had been calling my parents all afternoon. Home phone, business lines, detailed messages. They coordinated with Detroit PD for a welfare check at our Buckhead address. Have they responded? No, she said bluntly, which tells us a lot about their priorities. Detroit cops found them at home around 5 p.m. Detroit time. According to the officers, Joe and Paige seemed surprised law enforcement was involved. They explained they were teaching their son self-reliance and planned to let him work through the challenge independently for several days before returning. Several days. In a city I'd never seen. The Detroit officers documented their statements, Carol said. Those will be used as evidence in the criminal case. That night, I was placed with the Carver family in Kenosha, 20 miles north of Milwaukee. Tom was a high school principal, Susan a registered nurse at the local hospital. They had 2 teenagers, Katie, 16 female, and Elias, 15 male, and had been doing emergency foster care for over a decade. This is temporary, Carol explained during the drive. A few days while we assess and determine next steps. The Carvers are experienced with emergency placements. The Carver house was normal. 2-story colonial in a middle-class neighborhood, small yard, basketball hoop in the driveway. Katie and Elias were polite but curious, obviously wondering what kind of situation brings a stranger from Detroit into their home with zero notice. We're glad you're safe, Susan said, showing me to the guest room. Tomorrow we'll get you enrolled in school temporarily and make sure you have clothes and supplies. Tonight, just try to rest. I didn't sleep at all, of course. Kept replaying Dad's words. Figure it out, son. Trying to understand how parents abandon their kid in a strange city over one imperfect grade. Criminal charges were filed the next morning. Aggravated child abandonment, child endangerment, reckless conduct. All felonies. I still remember the case number perfectly. My birth parents hired Detroit's most expensive white-collar criminal defense firm within 48 hours. Their strategy became crystal clear. Minimize media attention, spin the incident as a misunderstood parenting decision, and negotiate reduced charges that wouldn't destroy their precious reputation. They cared more about protecting their social standing than getting their abandoned kid back safely. Meanwhile, I was discovering what actual parental care looked like. The Carvers treated me with kindness, but gave me space to process what had happened. Tom helped me enroll at Kenosha Township High temporarily, making sure I wouldn't fall behind academically. Susan took me clothes shopping, treating it like normal family business instead of charity. Katie and Elias included me in their routines without making it weird. Movie nights, help navigating new school social dynamics, gradually making me feel less like displaced baggage and more like a temporary family. The contrast was striking. Tom would ask about my day and actually listen to the answer. Susan made sure I had lunch money, and didn't treat it like some massive favor she was doing me. When I got a B+ on a history test at Kenosha Township, Tom said, "Nice work," and moved on with his life. No interrogation about why it wasn't an A. No comparisons to other students. But the Carvers couldn't do long-term placement due to space and other fostering commitments, so DCFS started looking for something permanent. That's when I met Eric and Celeste. Eric, 42, electrical engineering professor at Northwestern. Celeste, 40, clinical psychologist specializing in family trauma and adolescent development. Married 15 years, foster parents for over a decade, no biological kids of their own. "We'd like to meet and see if this might work," Celeste said during our first phone call. "No pressure to decide quickly, and you should feel comfortable asking any questions." Their Racine house was bigger than the Carvers, but still felt like a home rather than a showroom. Living room furniture arranged for conversation, not display. Books everywhere. The basement was converted to a combination office and electrical workshop with 3 workstations and equipment more sophisticated than Westminster's shop class. "Interested in electrical work?" Eric asked, noticing me checking out the setup. "A little," I said, which was a massive understatement. I'd been teaching myself basic wiring, circuitry, and electrical systems since middle school, mostly out of curiosity and boredom. "What kind of projects have you worked on?" I described a lighting system I'd installed for our church youth group and a simple control panel I'd created to help my tennis coach manage court lighting. Eric listened with genuine interest, asked technical questions, and offered improvement suggestions. "Want to see some projects I'm working on?" For the next hour, he showed me research applications for power distribution and electrical grid analysis. He treated me like a colleague, not a kid, refreshing and inspiring as hell. "Most people think electrical work is just connecting wires," he said, pulling up schematics on his computer. "But it's really about understanding power flow, load management, and efficiency optimization. It's applied physics with immediate real-world impact." He showed me a project he was consulting on, redesigning the electrical systems for a manufacturing plant to reduce their energy costs by 30%. Save them $120,000 annually while improving reliability. That's the kind of work that actually matters. Celeste's approach was equally respectful, but focused on emotional development. "You've experienced significant trauma," she said during our second meeting. "Parental abandonment creates deep psychological wounds that take time to heal. I want you to know that whatever you're feeling, anger, confusion, sadness, even relief, all those emotions are completely normal and valid." She didn't push me to talk, but made it clear professional help was available whenever I was ready. After 3 weeks of regular visits and conversations, Eric and Celeste asked if I wanted to try longer-term placement. "We'd love to have you become part of our family," Eric said. "No pressure. You can change your mind anytime. But we think you might be happy here, and we'd be honored to be part of your life." So I moved in with Eric and Celeste in May 2002, 3 months after the Milwaukee Mitchell abandonment. The criminal case against my birth parents crawled through Milwaukee County Court. Their attorneys kept requesting delays, pushing for plea negotiations. The prosecutor was building a case that this was part of a psychological abuse pattern, not an isolated parenting mistake. A guardian was appointed to represent my legal interests. Richard, former prosecutor in his 60s specializing in child welfare cases. He interviewed me extensively and compiled a detailed report documenting not just the abandonment, but the broader context of perfectionism and emotional abuse in my birth family. "Your parents show no genuine remorse," he told me after one meeting. "Their focus is entirely on minimizing legal consequences and protecting their reputation. They haven't asked about your well-being, living situation, or emotional recovery." My brother Brandon visited once during this period, maybe 6 months after the abandonment. Drove up from Detroit in his BMW convertible, graduation gift from our parents, and took me to lunch in downtown Milwaukee. He looked uncomfortable the entire time, like he'd drawn the short straw and gotten stuck with damage control duty. Kept checking his phone. "Mom and Dad miss you," he said awkwardly, picking at his Caesar salad. "Do they really?" "They're stressed about the legal case. Dad says attorneys are costing $15,000 a month, and publicity is hurting dealership business. Some friends stopped inviting them to social events." I noticed he led with their financial stress, not any concern for my well-being. "Are they sorry for what they did to me?" Brandon considered this for a long time. "They're sorry it became a legal case," he said finally. That conversation told me everything I needed to know. The case concluded in November 2002 with a plea agreement. No jail time, but substantial fines. 2 years supervised probation, mandatory parenting classes, supervised visitation only. They kept parental rights technically, but I remained in long-term foster care with Eric and Celeste. 8 months later, Eric and Celeste asked if I wanted to make it permanent through adoption. "We've grown to love you like our own son," Celeste said. "We'd be honored if you'd let us adopt you officially and become permanent family." "Yes," I said immediately. "Absolutely yes." The adoption process took nearly a year due to legal complexities, but was finalized in August 2003. As part of the adoption, I legally changed my last name. New identity, new family, new life with people who actually cared about my well-being, instead of just my performance. High school with Eric and Celeste was night and day from my previous academic career. Instead of constant pressure for perfection, they encouraged exploration and intellectual curiosity. Instead of comparing me to Brandon's achievements, they celebrated my unique interests and abilities. Eric became my informal mentor in electrical engineering and applied sciences. He didn't push me toward electrical work, but when I showed genuine interest, he provided resources, guidance, and opportunities most high schools don't offer. By junior year, I was auditing undergraduate electrical engineering courses at Northwestern and working on research projects with graduate students. Celeste helped me develop emotional intelligence and interpersonal skills. She taught me about healthy relationships, effective communication, and processing difficult emotions without suppression or explosion. By senior year, I had straight A's, strong test scores, and an electrical projects portfolio that impressed college admissions officers. More importantly, I'd developed genuine friendships, discovered interests beyond academic achievement, and learned what it felt like being valued for who I was rather than what I accomplished. Stanford accepted me for electrical engineering with a partial merit scholarship. My birth parents attempted contact as I prepared for college. A letter arrived at Eric and Celeste's house in July 2006, written on expensive letterhead from their attorney's office. "Dear Alan, we are proud of your academic achievements and Stanford acceptance. We understand you are angry about past family conflicts, but hope you can recognize that our high expectations helped motivate you to reach your current success level. We would like to reconnect and be part of your future accomplishments. Please contact us to discuss providing financial support for your college education and rebuilding our relationship. With love and respect, Joe and Paige." I showed the letter to Celeste, then filed it away without responding. Stanford was challenging, but exactly the environment I'd been craving. I excelled in advanced mathematics and electrical engineering courses, made friends with other serious students, and started dating Allison, a mathematics major from Maine who shared my interest in power systems and problem solving. Junior year, I interned at an electrical contracting company in Tampa, developing power systems for small businesses. The company was founded by two Stanford grads trying to create better electrical distribution systems for retail stores. They offered me full-time employment after graduation, but I had bigger plans. Senior year, I partnered with two classmates to develop our own electrical contracting business. Let's call it FlexChain, helping small manufacturing companies optimize electrical systems and reduce energy waste through better power management. The business model was simple but effective. Most small manufacturers were running electrical systems designed in the 80s and 90s, hemorrhaging money through inefficient power distribution and outdated equipment. We'd do comprehensive electrical audits, identify waste points, and redesign their systems for maximum efficiency. Our typical client saved 20 to 30% on their electrical costs while improving system reliability. My partners handled sales and project management. I focused on the technical design work, the actual engineering that made the savings possible. FlexChain gained traction fast among mid-sized manufacturers in Florida and Maine. Within 8 months, we had over 200 active clients and were generating enough revenue to cover basic operating expenses. More importantly, we'd attracted attention from larger electrical contracting firms interested in acquiring our client base. We sold FlexChain to a Fortune 500 electrical contracting firm for $1.8 million in September 2010. My share of the acquisition was $600,000. I was 22 with a solid financial foundation to build from. The FlexChain acquisition opened doors throughout the electrical contracting industry. I joined the acquiring company as senior electrical project manager, then moved to a supervisory role at a larger industrial electrical firm in Cleveland. Allison and I maintained our relationship through grad school. She earned a PhD in applied mathematics from Miami, while I built my career in electrical contracting. We moved to Cleveland together in 2012, and she took a position as senior data scientist at Dell Technologies. By 30, I was shop foreman at an electrical contracting company, developing advanced industrial electrical systems. By 33, I was running my own electrical contracting business with over 30 employees, being courted by major industrial firms for partnerships. The Cleveland market was perfect for what I was building. My company specialized in large-scale industrial electrical projects, work that required serious engineering expertise and couldn't be handled by your typical residential electrician. We weren't just installing outlets and running wire. We were designing complete power distribution systems for factories, optimizing electrical loads for manufacturing equipment, implementing backup power systems that could keep entire production lines running during outages. High-margin work that required real expertise. My business was generating solid six figures annually. My investments in various electrical contracting ventures were worth over $1 million, and I'd built a solid reputation in Cleveland's electrical contracting community. Allison and I bought a house in Westlake Hills, traveled, and lived comfortably, but not ostentatiously. Throughout this entire period, my birth parents made contact attempts. Facebook friend requests that I blocked immediately. LinkedIn messages deleted without reading. Holiday cards sent to my workplace that I threw away unopened. Letters addressed to our son Alan returned to sender. All blocked. All ignored. All documented in a file I maintained specifically for this purpose, on Celeste's and my attorney's advice. Eric and Celeste remained my real family through everything. They flew to Cleveland for my 2014 wedding, celebrated every business milestone, and treated Allison like their daughter. When Eric was diagnosed with early-stage prostate cancer in 2016, I took leave to help coordinate his treatment and recovery. Do you ever wonder what your life would have been like if you'd maintained contact with your birth parents? Celeste asked during one of their Cleveland visits. Never, I said honestly. They made their choice. Everything good in my life happened because I could build relationships with people who actually care about my well-being. Brandon and I had minimal contact through social media. He'd taken over day-to-day operations of 2 dealerships, married his college girlfriend, and had 3 kids. Based on Facebook posts, he seemed to be living the exact life our parents had planned for him. Country club membership, expensive cars, elaborate family vacations, social prominence in Detroit's business community. Dad asks about you sometimes, he mentioned during a rare phone call. I'm sure he does. They're not as demanding as they used to be. Having grandchildren changed their perspective on family relationships. They realized they made mistakes with us when we were younger. Good for them, doesn't change anything for me. Alan, they're in their 60s now. Mom's been having health problems. Don't you think it's time to let go of old resentments? Brandon, they abandoned me at an airport when I was 14. That's not a resentment. It's a rational response to people who prove they can't be trusted with basic human decency. He stopped trying to reconcile us after that conversation. My life was stable, professionally successful, and completely insulated from the people who had abandoned me. Allison and I were happy. My relationship with Eric and Celeste was strong, and my business continued growing. Then, in March 2024, everything changed. It started with a LinkedIn message from some paralegal named Lisa at a Detroit law firm. Mr. Allen, I represent Joe and Paige regarding an urgent family matter. Please contact our office immediately regarding time-sensitive legal case. Time-sensitive legal issues require your immediate attention. I deleted it without responding and blocked the sender. Then emails to my work address. Voicemails on my office phone from different attorneys. Finally, a certified letter delivered to my house that I signed for out of curiosity. Inside was a letter from Brandon and a stack of legal documents telling an increasingly familiar story. Alan, I know you want nothing to do with them, but Dad and Mom are facing serious federal criminal charges for tax evasion, fraud, and money laundering. The dealerships are all in bankruptcy proceedings, and they're looking at potential sentences of 15 to 20 years in federal prison. I've been trying to handle this alone, but I can't afford the legal fees and don't have the financial resources to help them. They need character witnesses and support for their legal defense. I know you're successful, and I'm hoping you might be willing to help. Despite everything that happened when we were kids, please call me. Brandon, I researched the situation through public records and news reports. The automotive group was indeed facing complete financial collapse. The IRS had filed tax liens totaling over $2.1 million. The FBI had executed search warrants at all 4 dealership locations and their personal residence. There were criminal complaints from customers, former employees, and business partners alleging systematic fraud dating back at least a decade. According to the Detroit Free Press, federal investigators believed Joe had been operating an elaborate tax evasion and money laundering scheme, systematically underreporting cash sales, skimming revenue from service departments, and funneling money through shell companies in Vermont and Utah to avoid federal taxes. The investigation started when a former finance manager named Daniel reported suspicious activities to IRS Criminal Investigation. Daniel had worked at their flagship Buckhead dealership for 6 years before being terminated for asking too many questions about accounting irregularities. Joe and Paige were facing potential sentences of 15 to 20 years in federal prison, plus complete financial ruin from civil penalties and restitution requirements. My phone started ringing constantly. Brandon, extended relatives I hadn't spoken to since childhood, family friends trying to guilt me into providing assistance. They're still your parents, regardless of past problems, my paternal grandmother pleaded in one voicemail. Family takes care of family during crisis. You have resources to help them, and they desperately need support. The situation escalated when they showed up at my business in Cleveland. Joe and Paige, mid-60s now, were waiting in my electrical contracting shop lobby. They looked older and more desperate than I remembered. Joe's hair completely gray, Paige wearing an inexpensive dress. They'd clearly traveled to Cleveland specifically to confront me in person. My office manager called my cell. There are 2 individuals here claiming to be your biological parents. They're requesting an immediate meeting. Should I have them come to your office? No, I said calmly. Have them escorted off the property immediately. Add their names to the permanent restricted visitor list and notify me if they return. I watched from my second-floor office window as my security walked them to their rental car in the parking lot. Paige appeared to be crying. Joe looked completely defeated. That evening, Brandon called my personal cell. They drove all the way to Cleveland to see you. They're desperate, Alan. Federal sentencing hearing is scheduled for next month. Without character witnesses or help with legal fees, they're definitely going to prison for decades. Then they should have considered that before committing federal crimes. They're family, whether you want to acknowledge it or not. No, I said calmly. Eric and Celeste are my family. Allison is my family. Don't ask me to save people who abandoned me at an airport when I was 14. Brother, please. I hung up and blocked his number. The federal case against my birth parents dominated Detroit business news for months. Prominent auto dealers face lengthy prison sentences. Family empire crumbles under federal investigation. Their social standing was completely destroyed, their business reputation in ruins. I could have simply observed from Cleveland as karma finally caught up with them after 2 decades. But I remembered something Eric had taught me about electrical systems. Elegant solutions address root causes systematically, not just surface symptoms. The root cause was that Joe and Paige had spent their entire lives avoiding meaningful consequences for their actions. The abuse, the abandonment, the business fraud, all part of a pattern of believing rules didn't apply to them. I decided to help them learn that lesson properly. I retained a forensic accounting firm in Detroit to conduct a thorough investigation of the family's financial activities, not to help them avoid prosecution, but to ensure federal investigators had access to all relevant evidence. The forensic accountants I hired weren't messing around. These guys specialized in white-collar crime investigations for federal agencies. They knew exactly what to look for and how to document everything properly for legal proceedings. It cost me $25,000, but it was worth every penny to ensure the job got done right. My investigators discovered Joe had also been embezzling funds from the Detroit Children's Foundation, where Paige served as vice chair of the board. They'd been stealing money from a charity dedicated to helping sick children while simultaneously building their reputation as philanthropic community leaders. The Detroit Children's Foundation theft was particularly brutal. Joe had been invoicing the charity for consulting services through one of his shell companies, billing them for work that was never performed. Over 3 years, he'd stolen nearly $90,000 from an organization that provided medical equipment to pediatric hospitals. The evidence was forwarded to federal prosecutors, who expanded their investigation accordingly. I also learned Brandon was likely complicit in several aspects of dealership fraud. He'd been signing off on falsified sales documents and participating in cash skimming operations for at least 3 years. Daniel, the whistleblower who reported them to federal authorities, contacted me through my legal team. He provided additional evidence prosecutors hadn't discovered yet: recorded conversations with Joe, photographs of falsified documents, detailed records of money laundering through offshore bank accounts. Turns out Daniel had been documenting everything for months before he got fired. The guy was smart enough to know something major was wrong, and careful enough to build a bulletproof case. He had recordings of Joe explicitly instructing employees to underreport cash sales, photos of 2 sets of books, one for the IRS, one showing actual revenue, bank statements proving money was being transferred to shell companies in Utah and Vermont. I knew they'd try to pin everything on lower-level employees once the investigation started, Daniel told me during a conference call with my attorneys. So I made sure to document Joe's direct involvement in every aspect of the fraud. Couldn't let them sacrifice some bookkeeper to save their own hides. all completely legal, all properly obtained through legitimate investigative processes. Expanded federal charges were filed 3 weeks before their scheduled sentencing hearing. Paige called me 2 days before the hearing. She'd somehow obtained my number through private investigation services. "Alan's son," she said in a voicemail, her voice shaking with desperation. "We know we hurt you when you were young, and we're sorry for our mistakes, but we're losing everything now. Brandon's going to prison too because of these new charges. You're successful and financially secure. You could help us with legal fees or character references. We're still your parents, and we love you." I saved the voicemail and had my attorney document it as evidence of continued harassment. Joe called the next day. "Son, I know we made serious errors in judgment when you were younger. We were trying to teach you strength and resilience, and we're proud of the successful man you became. Please don't let our family be completely destroyed over past conflicts. We're begging you to help us." I saved that voicemail too. The federal sentencing hearing was held last month. Joe received 8 years in federal prison plus $2.8 million in restitution. Paige received 5 years plus $1.2 million in restitution. Brandon received 36 months and permanent revocation of his dealer licenses. The judge didn't hold back during sentencing. He called their actions a systematic betrayal of trust that extended far beyond tax evasion into the realm of moral bankruptcy. Joe actually had the nerve to request leniency based on his contributions to the Detroit business community. The judge shut that down immediately. Complete financial ruin, social disgrace, federal prison sentences, everything they'd spent their lives building, wealth, status, reputation, business empire, completely destroyed. The asset forfeiture was comprehensive and brutal. Federal marshals seized the Buckhead House, the vacation property in northern Michigan, the country club memberships, even Paige's jewelry collection. All 4 dealerships were sold at auction to cover restitution and legal fees. Their former friends in Detroit's social circles acted like they'd never existed. Their final communication arrived through their attorney yesterday. "Our clients deeply regret past family conflicts and acknowledge that their previous parenting methods were flawed. They understand your anger, but hope that when they complete their sentences, you might find it possible to forgive them and help them rebuild their lives. They have lost everything except hope that their son might show them mercy." I had the letter framed and hung it in my home office, right next to a photograph of Eric, Celeste, Allison, and me at our wedding. My actual family. The people who didn't abandon 14-year-old kids at airports and then spend 20 years justifying it as character development. Some lessons really do stick forever. They taught me that actions have consequences, even when those consequences take 22 years to arrive. I taught them the same lesson: justice delivered with compound interest.